Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Radha Kunj Bihari Radha Kunj Bihari Radhe
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 Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Mai Subhadra
Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Mai Subhadra
Jaya Srinath Ji Jaya Bala Gopal Jaya Srinath Ji Jaya Giri Govardhan
Jaya Srinath Ji Jaya Bala Gopal Jaya Srinath Ji Jaya Giri Govardhan
Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai
Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Jai Harinam Sankirtana
Ki Jai
Shri Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Gaudiya Vaishnava Ki. Hare Krishna. Okay. 4 brave souls with videos on today. Less than 50%. Let's see if we can get more.
Less than 50% participation.
I know. We're getting there. You just have to ask Raga Priya Prabhu. Then we'll get one more. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna. Welcome to this discussion on most wonderful Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita. So today, I understand the morning reading group has concluded chapter number 18. So we'll discuss from verse 111 until the end and discuss the chapter entitled The Lord's Visit to Sri Vrindavan. So last time we had discussion of Radhakund, Govardhan, Haridev Temple, and we talked about this very special place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to go and chant his rounds every day. And it was actually the inner reason why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Vrindavan was to practice and experience the mood that was in the place of Imlitala. Imlitala is a place where a beautiful tamarind tree was there, and it was one of the favorite places of Srimati Radharani. And Srimati Radharani would go there and call out to her beloved Krishna whenever she was feeling some mood of separation from him. She would take shelter of this place right on the banks of the river Yamuna. And so many glorious pastimes took place there. And we know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was coming in the mood of Srimati Radharani. But specifically in the mood of Srimati Radharani in separation from Krishna. So Radharani has two experiences with Krishna. One is in association with Krishna, and the other is in separation. And as we know by our Shastra, the mood of love, the intensity of that attraction increases in what we call vipralamba seva, or in separation. So when Radharani was separated from Krishna, her intensity of love was magnified many, many, many more times. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wanting to come to experience the highest rasa of bhakti, came to experience this. And so this place of Imlitala was a very important place because there he was tasting this very intense love of Krishna in the mood of separation. And Krishna himself, as we discussed last time, came to this place in search of Srimati Radharani. And himself began chanting the names of Srimati Radharani, feeling intense separation from her. So it is a very sweet place where Krishna himself chanted the names of Radharani, or Radharani chanted the names of Krishna, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and chanted the names of both daily, every day, walking from Akrura Tirtha to this place, Imlitala. So a very, very special place. Then we also discussed last time how one must see Vrindavan and see everything, for that matter, through the eyes of Shastra and Guru. Because those residents of Vrindavan at that time were thinking they saw Krishna, when in fact they were convinced they were seeing Krishna. They were in ecstasy, thinking they were seeing Krishna. But in fact, what were they seeing? But a fisherman's boat with a few lanterns on it. They thought they were seeing Krishna dancing on Kaliyadhan. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very mercifully slapped Balabhadra Bhattacharya to correct him when he asked, "Can I go see?" And we know the foolish people were looking at Krishna himself, at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and thinking him an ordinary man, and looking at the boat in the lake thinking that's Krishna. And this polar opposite is what we succumb to when we try to understand Krishna and Shastra and the process of devotional service by our own means. This is what happens. It actually happens every time. This is not an occasional occurrence. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is describing this pastime very importantly. And if we read the end, one of the last verses of this chapter, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami makes a very important statement. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's visit to Vrindavan and his activities there are unlimited. Even Lord Shesha, who has thousands of hoods, cannot reach the end of his activities. This is verse 223. So his pastimes in Vrindavan are unlimited. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami spends a number of verses in this chapter on this point, and it tells us how important it is. Right? There were so many things he could have tried to summarize, and he picked this being fooled by one's own mental speculation as an important part of this chapter. So we understand its great importance. While we relish, the very sweet pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in various parts of Vrindavan, and he could have filled 3 books just discussing all of those, he very mercifully for us gave us this very important pastime to show us and to warn us and to protect us from making a similar mistake. And we note that the chastisement from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the ultimate blessing for Balabhadra Bhattacharya. Sometimes we need a little corrective action, corrective instruction. Yes, maybe a little painful to receive, but it is for our benefit. And that is what we see here. So today we'll discuss, I thought, 3 topics. One, we'll talk a little bit more about this Mayavadi sannyasis who are, after being corrected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are now calling him Krishna, which ironically, and this is great irony, they're actually right, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is correcting them because certainly Krishna is manifesting himself in the mood of a devotee. So we'll discuss a little bit about that. We'll discuss about the Akrura Tirtha pastimes, a nice pastime that happens here in this Chaitanya Caritamrita, and that pastime is described from Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto. And then we'll discuss the very powerful deliverance of these Pathana soldiers, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continues to deliver wherever he goes. It's a very sweet set of verses there, so we'll discuss those 3 things today. So we'll read today from text number 113. Jiva Ishvara Tata Kabu Nahaya Sama Jiva Ladagni Rashiya Cheshpulingera Kana. Translation. A living entity and the absolute personality of Godhead are never to be considered equal, just as a fragmental spark can never be considered the original flame. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Mayavadi sannyasis consider themselves Brahman, and they superficially speak of themselves as Narayan. The monistic disciples of the Mayavada school, known as Smarta Brahmanas, are generally householder Brahmanas who accept the Mayavadi sannyasis as Narayan incarnate. Therefore, they offered their obeisances to them. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately protested this unauthorized system, specifically mentioning that a sannyasi is nothing but a fragmental portion of the Supreme, Chit Kana Jiva. In other words, he is nothing more than an ordinary living being. He is never Narayan, just as a molecular particle portion of sunshine is never the sun itself. The living entity is nothing but a fragmental part of the absolute truth. Therefore, at no stage of perfection can a living entity become the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Mayavadi viewpoint is always condemned by the Vaishnava school. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself protested this philosophy. When the Mayavadis accept sannyasi and consider themselves Narayan, they become so puffed up that they do not even enter the temple of Narayan to offer respects, for they falsely think themselves Narayan himself. Although Mayavadi sannyasis may offer respects to other sannyasis and address them as Narayan, they do not go to the Narayan temple and offer respects. These Mayavadi sannyasis are always condemned and described as demons. The Vedas clearly state that the living entities are subordinate parts and parcels of the Supreme. Eko bahonam yogi dadati kaman. The Supreme Being, Krishna, maintains all living entities. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagna Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagna Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Namaste Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse we read, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was calling out in the prior verse. He explained, Vishnu, Vishnu, do not call me the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A jiva cannot become Krishna at any time. Don't even say such a thing. So these people who thought they saw Krishna on the lake, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to correct them, they began to say, oh, Krishna is here. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing us again on the importance of understanding who is Krishna and who is the living entity. So in the Mayavadi school, the Srila Prabhupada is commenting that they consider themselves to be Narayan, and they consider themselves to be of such personality. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is quoting here. He's saying that a fragmental part can never become the original flame. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example. A molecule of sunshine, you cannot consider that to be the sun. Just as the living entity is a tiny, fragmental part of the Supreme Lord. And this is an eternal fact. It is not that if you take sannyas, all of a sudden you become the whole. No. And this is a very important concept that Srila Prabhupada is calling out here. And Prabhupada calls this philosophy atheistic. And if we read in verse 115, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu uses the same word. He says, Pashandi Haya, a first-class atheist. So he goes even further. He's a first-class atheist, this Pashandi. So this idea of becoming God is born out of ego. It's what brought us here in the first place. Why you? Why not me? We said to the Lord. And this impersonalist philosophy under this Mayavadi school is trying to fulfill this age-old desire to become the Lord, but you cannot. And thus it is very, very dangerous. And Srila Prabhupada quotes, from Shastra, this verse, Eko bahunam yavi dadati kaman. The first part of that verse, you may know, this Nitya Nityanas Chaitanas Chaitananam. That among all the eternals, there is one supreme eternal. So yes, we as spirit soul are eternal, and the Supreme Lord is eternal. But Eko bahunam, one is maintaining all the others. If we're all equal, why one has to maintain the others? If we're all self-sufficient, we're same nitya, then why we must be maintained? Because we don't have our own existence. So this comes straight from our Vedic Shastra. But, of course, to fulfill a certain desire, one will contort this. So this philosophy, as we've talked about previously, so we won't spend so much time on it today, is very antagonistic to the position of the Supreme Lord. Now what's interesting is you see that they offer respects to each other. So if we're observing, we say, oh, these are very humble people. Right? They're offering dandavats to each other, the nice Vaishnava etiquette. So we have to understand that when we offer respects, what is the mood in which we are offering respects? It is not a physical activity. It is an activity of consciousness. And so their consciousness is, I am offering to Narayan and you are offering back to me as Narayan. That is not a humble mood. But the activity looks humble. It is dandavats. So we should be very mindful that what we observe externally may or may not be what is reflected within the heart. And when we are offering our respects, when we go into the temple, sometimes we offer our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. What is our consciousness? It is not just a ritual, an act I'm supposed to do, but we should offer our obeisances in gratitude to Srila Prabhupada for presenting us this opportunity to see and serve these most wonderful deities. So our mood when we offer obeisances should be of humility, of offering actual obeisances versus just becoming mechanical in the process. Because we see, even in these Mayavadi sannyasis, they're offering obeisances, but the consciousness is not just. So for us, who obviously are, having at least some understanding of this philosophy by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in knowing we are a fragmental part and not falling into this trap of the Mayavadi philosophies, there's still a practical application for us, is when we offer obeisances, to inculcate this mood of humility. It's why we put our head on the ground and beg the blessings. And so when we offer, we can try to do that. So in verse 115, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, a foolish person who says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the same as the living entity is an atheist and becomes subject to punishment by the superintendent of death, Yamaraj. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that this is a very atheistic philosophy. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport gives a nice discussion of the Pashandi, this atheist. And there's some different varieties of atheists. So he says first in the purport that one who considers a living entity to be equal to Supreme Lord, that's an atheist. Fairly obvious, right? If the son considers himself to be equal to the father, does that create a very harmonious and nice relationship? No, that is a relationship of competition. Right? I am trying to usurp that position. So when one claims that the living entity is equal to God, well then certainly it's very antagonistic to the Supreme Lord. So that is one variety of Pashandi. Then Srila Prabhupada quotes from a couple of other Shastras and says, those who consider the demigods and the Supreme God, the Supreme Lord, to be one, that is also atheistic. Because on the same light, whether the living entity or the more advanced and more senior living entity, still within the realm of the living entity. So that is another kind. Then the third, this one might be surprising. One who disobeys the orders of the spiritual master is considered a Pashandi. Right? This is on the top of page 196 in the purport to 115. Prabhupada says, quote, one who disobeys the order of the spiritual master is also considered a Pashandi. So to not follow. Why? Because those orders are coming directly from the Supreme Lord through Guru Parampara. And so to disobey those orders is also very dangerous for the living entity. So one must be very careful I think, oh, I don't consider the Lord to be, equal to me. I don't consider the demigods to be equal. But are we following, the orders of the instructions of the Supreme, of the spiritual master, and following the vows and following the regulations? So Srila Prabhupada concludes this paragraph by saying, on the whole, a Pashandi is a non-devotee who does not accept the Vedic conclusions. So that is a good general summation. Right? So what the result of this activity is, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, punishment by the superintendent of death, Yamaraj. Why? Why one would go to Yamaraj? Just because they have a different belief. Well, it's not just a different belief, but again, this is, again, a very offensive mentality, right? One then will go out and blaspheme the different Vaishnavas, right? As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is recipient of great blasphemy from Prakashananda Saraswati, who is on his way now towards Kashi to deliver him. But on the way to Vrindavan, he was a recipient of great blasphemy. And thus, that is, sets one up for great success in receiving punishment from Yamaraj. It's guaranteed. So that is a little bit that we see on this Pashandi term that we see. And you'll see this reference throughout our Shastra. Many times in Srimad Bhagavatam, we see this reference being made. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued on with his different activities, and we see that he was bestowing great love, because at the end of this, these individuals who were so fallen in understanding, it says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then bestowed his causeless mercy upon all the people there, and everyone became ecstatic with love of God. Finally, they all returned to home. How fortunate they are, right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his own form and names in just a few minutes, and they became full of Krishna prema. From the most fallen of atheistic philosophy to Krishna prema. He bestowed his mercy upon all of them. So imagine what chance we have if we take shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Srila Prabhupada has been telling us over and over again, don't think because 500 years have elapsed that the potency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy is in any way diminished. Just by calling out to Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shivasari Shigo, Bhakta Vrinda, we can harness this unlimited potency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. That even these atheists were immediately converted to Krishna prema. So wonderful. We'll see another such transformation at the end of this discussion today. So, in verse 136 and 135, in this area of this chapter, we see the pastimes of Akrura Tirtha. So, one day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat at the bathing ghat of Akrura Tirtha and thought the following thoughts. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought, at this bathing ghat, Akrura saw Vaikuntha, the spiritual world, and all the inhabitants of Vraja saw Goloka Vrindavan. So, this pastime that's being described here, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu jumps in the water and submerged himself in the water in ecstasy for some time, going very ecstatic. It's a very interesting and sweet pastime that takes place. This is described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that when Akrura had come to Vrindavan to bring Krishna and Balaram to Mathura, and we know as a very, very painful separation as Akrura is taking Krishna and Balaram, and all the residents of Vrindavan are just devastated, and the gopis are falling in front of the chariot, ready to give up their bodies because at the thought of being separated from Krishna, and there was great anguish and lamentation, and even Krishna seated on the chariot, seeing this, is moved by this feeling of anguish and pain, and he assures them, "I'll be right back. I'll be right back." Of course, he went on to perform many, many pastimes. as we know, Krishna actually never left Vrindavan. Akrura took Vasudeva Krishna beyond the boundary of Vrindavan, and Krishna himself re-entered all the residents of Vrindavan into their hearts. And so, while he never left, he gave off the feeling of leaving. Why? Again, to allow the residents of Vrindavan to experience this Vipralamba Seva, this intensified love. So it was a reciprocation to the devotees' love. Sometimes they think, why Krishna left? I thought Krishna's always with his devotees. He is, but he was giving a very sweet mood to all of them. So anyways, so when Akrura is taking Krishna and Balaram in his chariot, and they approach the Yamuna, there Krishna and Balaram get off the chariot, and they take bath, and they wash their face, they drink some water, and then they go back on the chariot, and they're seated. And Akrura then takes permission that, may I also go take bath in the Yamuna. So Akruraji goes and takes bath in the Yamuna. And as is a ritual, Srila Prabhupada explains that when one takes bath at kind of the noontime, that one should chant Gayatri, half submerged in water up to the waist. One then chants Gayatri. It's very, very auspicious. And so Akrura began to chant Gayatri, and he saw Krishna and Balaram in the water. He thought, what? How they've come in the water? And so he quickly, runs out of the Yamuna and goes to the chariot, and this chariot seated under a beautiful tree in the shade, and Krishna and Balaram are just relaxing on the chariot. He said, what? I just saw them in the Yamuna. How they're, what's going on? And so he's bewildered, thinking maybe I'm mistaken. And so he goes back to the Yamuna. And there he sees not only Krishna and Balaram, he sees all the demigods, he sees Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. Then he sees Sheshanag. Lord Balaram had transformed into Sheshanag. And on top of Sheshanag is Mahavishnu. Krishna had transformed himself into Mahavishnu, and Mahavishnu is like, and Akrura is bestowing this very beautiful and ecstatic darshan. And he sees a very elaborate, very beautiful description of Mahavishnu in Srimad Bhagavatam here, describing his lotus-like fingernails and his petals and his the color of his skin and his golden anklets and armlets and bracelets and jeweled helmet and beautiful garlands and just wonderful description of his very beautiful form. So Akrura sees all this and goes into complete ecstasy. And so very nice pastime here. And then in the next chapter, we see some of the most beautiful prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam. Akrura then goes back to the chariot and offers very wonderful and beautiful prayers to Krishna and Balaram, having had this most amazing darshan and understanding who this Krishna and Balaram is. They are the supreme personality of Godheads, as we know, and so it's a very, very sweet experience. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come into this place. He remained within the water and jumped in and went into deep ecstasy. And Balabhadra Bhattacharya had to pull him out of the water and save him from drowning. And so this pastime takes place here in the middle of this chapter. So as the chapter progresses now, Balabhadra Bhattacharya is receiving many, many invitations from different brahmanas for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to have lunch, and it's feeling like now this is the time for them to leave. Again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was interested in coming to Vrindavan in somewhat of a secluded state. Right? He left Mathura to go to Kurutirtha to be more secluded. Imlikala, he was going by himself. And now the news was spreading of the potency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so Balabhadra Bhattacharya, developed some good rationale for returning back. Of course, the residents of Jagannath Puri are waiting, counting down the minutes when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will come back. But as we know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has some very important business to do on his way back. And so they make a plan that they're going to go to Prayag. It's coming to be a very auspicious time to take bath in the Ganges, at the confluence of the Ganges and the Yamuna. And so at this Magha Mela, during the month of Magha, there's a very auspicious time to take bath. And this will be a good time for us to go. If we leave now, we can reach there in time. And so they begin their way towards Prayag. And Prayag is a very important place for all of us. A very important place for all of us. But maybe not so obvious why. One, as we'll see in the next chapter, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to instruct Rupa Goswami on the science of devotional service. For 10 consecutive days and nights, he is going to instruct Rupa Goswami in all the secrets of devotional service. And Rupa Goswami then is going to present many, many literatures, two of which we read very detailed, Nectar of Instruction and Nectar of Devotion. But that instruction came at Prayag. So Prayag is a very important place for us. It is also the place that Srila Prabhupada took initiation. Srila Prabhupada had established a pharmacy in Prayag, and when the Gaudiya devotees came to Prayag, they asked Srila Prabhupada for some help. Of course, Srila Prabhupada had met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur some 11 years earlier. And so, after long separation, he came in contact with them. And after the Rajamandal Parikrama, you might recall, Srila Prabhupada goes to Vrindavan and sits and hears Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's class for many, many hours. And Bhaktisiddhanta noted Srila Prabhupada's desire for hearing. So after that, Srila Prabhupada comes back to his pharmacy in Prayag. He could only get away for one day to join this parikrama. Well, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, after this Brajamandal Parikrama, is coming to Prayag. They are going to do the stone ceremony, the cornerstone ceremony for a new temple there. And there were some initiations, and Srila Prabhupada was presented to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as a candidate. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, noted, yes, this boy likes to hear very much. He does not go away, noting the pastime just a few weeks prior in Vrindavan. So this Vrindavan to Prayag, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took the same journey, and Srila Prabhupada was awaiting, and there he took both first and second initiation in 1933. So Prayag is a very, very special place for all of us due to these two very nice pastimes. So we'll talk more about Prayag in the next chapter, more at least about what happens. The next several chapters are very, very instructive for us and very detailed. So on the way to Prayag, they have some different encounters, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as he would from time to time, went into ecstasy. He heard the flute of a cowherd boy, and that took him right back to Sri Vrindavan Dham. And he went into ecstasy, and he kind of fainted. And when he fainted, some Patana soldiers from the king of that area came, and they saw this sannyasi fainted, and these four men, right, there, and they thought, oh, who are these people? They must be stealing this from this sannyasi. They accused these four men. Who are the four men? There was Balabhadra Bhattacharya, his assistant, the Brahmana, and Krishnadas, the devotee who's coming with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Mathura. So these 10 soldiers come up and they accuse these four of drugging Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and trying to plunder from him. And so there's a very nice exchange first between the devotees and these soldiers, and then we'll see another exchange between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the leader of this group. So what's interesting that we see that immediately there was a very brave response from particularly Krishnadas, from Rajaputra Krishnadas, and the Brahmana. That what happened was when the soldiers accused them of being rogues, they were ready to arrest them and kill them. And so the first thing they do is the Rajaputta Krishna says, well, take us to your king and let's see what he has to say. So he has a very good relationship with the king. And he's a very high-class person, very powerful person, actually, this Krishna Das. He says, take us to your king, let's see what he has to say. And the soldiers were a little bit like, I don't know, maybe this person is somebody a little more influential. So then he says, okay, fine, don't take us to the king. Just arrest us, but wait for this gentleman to wake up. When he wakes up, he'll tell you everything. Right? So he thought, let's use some simple logic. I didn't want to embarrass this soldiers in front of the king. So then he tries that. But that didn't work. And these soldiers are ready to kill him. And then he says, okay, well, if you're going to play hardball, I'm going to play hardball. And he says, I have 200 Turkish soldiers who will come here in an instant and kill all of you. All I have to do is yell out to them, and they'll be here in a moment. And I found it very interesting that you see, Rajaputta Krishnadas had quite big facilities. He could immediately jump to that point and scatter them. But he tried to be nice. He tried to negotiate, and when all these simple ways were not going to work, he finally had to pull out all the cards. It's very, again, instructive for us. We may have some means or some ability, but don't have to show it in all instances. And Rajaputta Krishnadas was being very, very intelligent, and it's quite, I found it interesting that Balabhadra Bhattacharya and the servant were scared. They were simple people and servants, and they were shaking and trembling in fear. And Brahmana and Krishnadas are very strong and aggressive in fighting these 10 soldiers, again, verbally. And so, like this exchange takes place. But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu awoke from his ecstasy. And the soldiers by now realized that we probably should not, I don't think we want to have this sannyasi wake up and see his 4 accompaniments arrested. So he quickly untied all of them. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu awoken with this great roar. So I wanted to, read some of the verses that come up here because they're very, very nice. So the one of the leaders from this 10 soldiers was a very religious man, and he was a very grave person wearing a black dress. And so this man says to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wanted to preach to him. He wanted to preach to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he said that I'd like to preach the impersonal truths based on the Quran. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, listened, and he refuted everything. So in verse 189, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the Quran certainly establishes impersonalism, but at the end it refutes that impersonalism and establishes the personal God. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu begins to point by point defeat this philosophy on the basis of the Quran. So not saying, oh, my Shastra, your Shastra. No, taking their Shastra and saying this is what it really says. And he continues to say, no conditioned soul can get out of material bondage without serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Love at his lotus feet is the ultimate goal of life. It says, according to the Quran, the Lord is the supreme, blissful, transcendental body. He is the absolute truth, the all-pervading, omniscient, and eternal being. He is the origin of everything. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very skillfully is quoting from all of these. He says in 196, in the Quran there are descriptions of fruitive activities, speculative knowledge, mystic power, and union with the Supreme. But ultimately, all this is refuted and the Lord's personal feature established along with his devotional service. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is bringing out the essence of their Shastra in a very skillful way. He is not trying to quote, he's trying to quote from something that they should know. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the scholars of the Quran are not very advanced in knowledge. Although there are many methods prescribed, they do not know the ultimate conclusion. And he says at the end, seeing your own Quran deliberating over what is written, what is your conclusion? And so now we'll see the soldier's response is very beautiful. He says, all that you have said is true. This has certainly been written in the Quran, but our scholars can neither understand it nor accept it. And then in verse 201, he has the mood that we all hope we can come to. Since you are that very same Supreme Personality of Godhead, please be merciful upon me. I am fallen and unfit. And so this Patana soldier, this person, immediately surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this surrender is the perfection of all existence. Because what happens? Now we see in verse 203, what is the result of his surrender? Now that I have seen you, my tongue is chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The false prestige I felt from being a learned scholar is now gone. And saying this, the saintly Muslim fell at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and requested him to speak of life's ultimate goal and the process by which is obtained. So you achieve complete bliss. And then in verse 205, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, please get up. You have chanted the holy name of Krishna. Therefore, the sinful reactions you have accrued for many millions of lives are now gone. You are now pure. Just like chanting the holy names of the Lord just once. And then, the ultimate mercy. In this way, this is verse 207. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly initiated the saintly Muslim by advising him to chant the holy name of Krishna. The Muslim's name was changed to Ramadas. Another Patana Muslim was by the name of Vijuli Khan. So then he took initiation. And we want even more mercy. This I just found to be extraordinary. Later, this is verse 211, these very Patanas became celebrated as Patana Vaishnavas. They toured all over the country and chanted the glorious activity of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They became preachers, and they were spreading this pure love of the Supreme Lord. Actually, this Vijuli Khan became an exalted Vaishnava, great devotee. And Srila Prabhupada comments in the purport to one of the verses that this idea that, only certain people or only qualified people can take to the process of chanting or become initiated, or this is completely foolish. Anyone is qualified based on the mood. And the mood of these soldiers is when they understood, they surrendered. And they achieved the ultimate result, which is Krishna Prema. And this is the very glorious transformation. So over and over and over again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travels, whether it's to southern India, here, from Jagannath Puri considered western India, everyone was being, transformed into pure consciousness. And the power of his preaching is described in verse 220. Whoever met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became a Vaishnava, and whoever met that Vaishnava also became a Vaishnava. That is like the chain. Right? Whoever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met became a Vaishnava, and whoever met that Vaishnava became a Vaishnava. This is the quite opposite. Right now we are worried about the spreading of the virus through contact. This is the spreading of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. It's so sweet and wonderful. And again, we see the potency. And when we read these, we sometimes wonder, oh, that's nice, but when will I get there? When will we get there? When we surrender. When we surrender to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to Srila Prabhupada, to Gurudev. Then this transformation will happen as quickly. We think, it happened quickly because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally there. If we think that way, we don't understand the potency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. It is not in the least bit diminished. And so I wanted to read the last several verses of this chapter. They're very, very nice. The pastimes and methods of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are uncommon. Unfortunately, it is he who cannot believe them after hearing all these things. From the beginning to the end, the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are uncommon. Just hear them with faith and accept them as true and correct. Whoever argues about this is a great fool. He intentionally and personally brings a thunderbolt down upon his head. I love Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's statements here at the end. He normally ends them with great blessings, and this he's warning us again for our mercy. He says, the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are an ocean of nectar. Even a drop of this ocean can inundate the whole world with transcendental bliss. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rup and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita following in their footsteps. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita Madhya Lila, 18th chapter, describing the Lord's visit to Sri Vrindavan and his conversion of the Muslim soldiers on the way to Prayag. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. So those three topics we discussed today. Any discussion, realizations that anyone would like to share, comments, corrections?
A quick, for this ignorant soul, a quick question. At one point you had mentioned that we have to understand it and then experience it, or something similar. So is understanding necessary, or do we start experiencing it first and then understand it?
Yeah, I don't recall the context of that, understand versus experience it. But no, experience can lead to understanding. One can take to the process of chanting the holy names without understanding it. But one can...
Did you make it, on similar lines, so to speak?
Yeah. That's an appropriate mentality internally. That, yes, I'm just going to keep doing it and doing it until it happens. And that's what Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is. We practice the process of devotional service under the guidance of Guru and Shastra until we perfect it to such a stage that the impetus to do becomes internal. But until then, we do it under the order of Guru and Shastra because we don't fully understand it. Right?
I mean, I try to relate it to my own quote-unquote life story. Initially, I was not able to appreciate the nectar. Until I started to fake it. It says, okay, let me go down with 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds. And only when I was able to appreciate the flavor, so to speak, now it became second habit.
Yeah, and that's part of how devotional service works. Just do it. The results will come. There's a reciprocation. Krishna reciprocates with our devotional service all along the way. And as that reciprocation, that attraction, that taste is what propels us forward in the next step of the journey. And the taste from that step propels us forward, and it keeps propelling us forward. So, because you can try to conceptually understand everything, but if you don't practice it, that rasa won't come.
Exactly right.
So, Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna. Dhanyavad.
wonderful class association Prabhuji. So nice to hear this. A quick question. I know you made a very, very brief mention of this pastime when we talked about Krishnadas statement, and then you said it was very instructive, but I couldn't understand what the instruction was. This is in reference to when Krishnadas he's trying to tell these Pathan soldiers two different instances why they should not be arrested, and
Yeah.
though he actually was, as you said, very
Yeah,
what you said.
yeah. Krishna has had many means to stop these soldiers, but he tried more, cordial and collegial means. Just wait here, tie us up, keep us bound, and let Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wake up, and then he'll tell you. That's a very humble position. Who wants to be tied up for even 1 hour? Anybody? No. But he's like, there's no need to, bring violence. He could have destroyed those soldiers in a second with his own army. So, but someone with intelligence knows how to apply whatever their abilities are in right proportions, in right sequence, right? So that we don't have to create such a disturbance, just to, get our way. So he, with intelligence, he tried, more simple, easy ways. But when those didn't work, well, then it had to be escalated, So there was a means. But the instructor point was, he didn't go right to, let me call my soldiers, don't you know who I am? He tried some other means. So, for practical, services, sometimes, we're dealing with different situations and we try more, simple, direct means, maybe some more collegial means to, negotiate a solution. But if that doesn't work, then we have to maybe sometimes step up the position. Not so much, as this relates to, between Vaishnavas, but more in sort of general dealings. Even in spiritual life, we've had this experience in Rath Yatra, dealing and negotiating different types of things. Sometimes, we have to, try some initial means, but if they don't work, we have to bring some more, different, heavier armamentum, so to get what is needed to be done. So that was the point.
So kind of something like a subtle way of arm twisting when it's not really needed. So one should try that only in the last word.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you have the ability to destroy somebody, don't do it. Right? Try a more simple way. Try something that's a little less devastating. But at the end, if that doesn't work, well, then you may have to bring out that, ultimate threat.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Archana Mataji is asking, sometimes when people pray, they ask Lord Krishna things such as happiness, satisfaction, sometimes the materialistic desires. Is that some way wrong, Prabhuji? Is bhakti without anything in return is superior?
Well, anyabhilashita shunyam jnana kamadi navritam. So pure devotional service, which is the most pleasing and most potent, is without any desires. Without any desires. Anyabhilashita shunyam. Shunyam, none. So that is the most potent. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Artha, Kami and Jnani, and Jignasu. Not Kami. Artha, Arthi, Jignasu, and Jnani. Sorry, those 4. Pious souls, this is in chapter 7. They approach Krishna with some desire, but he still calls them pious souls. Because at least they are approaching Krishna. So, when you approach Krishna with your desires, 2 things happen. One, he helps you purify from those desires, because they're not good for you. We think, give me some wealth, let me go to Krishna. It's not good for you. It's pretty much like asking, to the doctor, give me a headache. It's about as, the same, similar approach. It's not good for you. So Krishna helps us purify from that desire. And he gives us what we're asking for in dosage that is good for us. So that is the best. So Krishna calls them pious. So we shouldn't say it's bad, because it's still better than not going to Krishna. But the best is when we go to Krishna with no desire. And I was speaking with one devotee today, and we were talking that how to ask from Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada taught us this very important way. When you pray to Krishna, you pray, very important, with these prelude line. Krishna, if you so desire, please. Then you fill in the blanks. But always, Krishna, if you so desire. Not Krishna, give me this. Krishna, I want that. It might not even be for us. But still, I want something. So we say, Krishna, if you so desire, please make so-and-so thing happen. It's so sweet. And Srila Prabhupada prayed this way. And he showed us this is the mood in which we can submit our inquiry. And you notice it's a very humble inquiry, right? You're saying, Krishna, if you so desire. And so whatever we pray for Krishna, let's add this vernacular, not just in saying, but in our mood. Don't say, if Krishna you so desire, and then when it doesn't happen, we get mad at Krishna. Why do you desire it to happen? No. We have faith. If it didn't happen, Krishna knows better. Whew! I was saved from that fiasco. I thought this was going to be good. Good thing I added, Krishna, if you so desire. That should be our mood when it doesn't happen. Okay? Yes, Wilma?
So in the part where, like, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, he put forth all the evidence from the Quran, and there's a statement that was made that, the scholars still could not accept it. Like, after hearing all these arguments and points, like, why couldn't the scholars?
They accepted it. Those who, the saintly gentlemen from the soldier, they accepted it. But others who were not in that assembly, they were not able to understand it because they did not yet receive the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Oh, because they did not meet personally yet.
So this soldier who was dressed in black and very religious, he got initiated right there, and he became Ramadas. He accepted it immediately. That's the potency of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, you have different descriptions, right? Krishna describes even the Sankhya path, right? He describes these different paths, the Jnana Yogi, the Ashtanga Yogi. But then he says, do bhakti. But not everybody does. It was up to that soldier whether he wanted to surrender to Krishna or not. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not force him. You surrender to me, or I'll smash you. No. He smashed him with his love. We can pray that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will smash our ego. Because what's preventing us from surrendering like that soldier? Our ego. Plain and simple. That's it. So we pray to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu if we can smash our ego. Then we can surrender. And Krishna Prema awaits on the other side of it. Anything else?
Prabhuji, how do we know that the ego is being broken?
Oh, you'll know. Oh, you'll know. It's painful. It's the best. It's the best. I don't know. When you find out, let me know. The ego is broken ultimately when we lose all of our material consciousness. And the concept of I am this body is a manifestation of our ego. Right? It's denial of I am spirit, soul, servant of Krishna. So we pray to the spiritual master, we pray to Krishna to keep shining the light on our ego so we can break it. It's like weeds in the garden. If you don't know what's a weed and what's not a weed, you don't know what to pull out. But if you're shown this is the weed, you can pull it out. So when we're shown her, you go, yeah, a little painful, maybe a lot, but it's the best. It allows the creeper of bhakti to grow. And that's a nice foreshadowing to the next weeks of discussion. This Bhakti Lata Bij is coming up in the next chapter. So, the next several chapters of Mandilila are very, very detailed and heavy in philosophy. And really the nectar of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings to Rupa and Sanatana Goswami are coming up. His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, when he speaks in Chaitanya Caritamrita, most of his classes come from chapter 19. So this is one of my favorite chapters of all of Chaitanya Caritamrita. Every verse is like so sweet and so full of nectar. So we'll get lots of great practical knowledge. A little less in pastimes and more heavy philosophy coming up in the next several weeks. So look forward to studying this with all of you. I'm very, very grateful that you all are gathering to read this Chaitanya Caritamrita. We all are gathering together and having an opportunity to discuss it. Any other comments or questions? Everybody still wants to go to Vrindavan? So how are we going to pray to Krishna? Krishna, if you so desire, please let me come to Vrindavan. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai.
Krishna.